Good morning and welcome to another edition of the CannaList Conversations. We're here with Philip Wolf. Philip is quite the busy individual. He is a member of the Rolling Stone Culture Council. He is a founder of Cultivating Spirits and a co-founder of the Cannabis Wedding Expo. Philip, how are you?
I'm doing really good, Patrick. I'm doing really good. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I even
Yeah.
left off like half the things in your bio, so you're fill us in on the rest because there's a laundry list of things that you're involved with. So
Yeah.
I don't want to diminish all the other things that you're working on as well. But
And the most exciting thing isn't even on the list yet. So we got
okay,
something fun to share with you on today's episode.
we love that. We love that. So
Yeah.
let's start at the top. So what does it mean to be a member of the Rolling Stone Culture Council?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it is just recognition of all of the hard work that I've been able to put in around the cannabis hospitality space, to have them believe in me as a thought leader, an authoritative voice in this space really just meant a lot to me. I remember when Rolling Stone gave me a call in 2015 about an article they were working on around cannabis pairings, and they were essentially trying to debunk cannabis pairings. The journalists had went to a couple of parties where they were doing it, and they said these parties are fun, but there's no legitimacy to the actual pairing portion. And I actually got to go down and meet with her and take her through the whole experience to show them the legitimacy behind the work that we're actually doing. And so that was really a notch in my belt in my career at the time. And then to get accepted on the Rolling Stone Culture Council just kind of allowed things to come full circle in the sense that I really had felt like I have, achieved a next step in my career, if you will.
So, you're talking about 2015. I'm sure it goes a lot further back. So how did you enter into the cannabis space?
Yeah, man, I was in the right conversation at the right time. After college, I went and tried to become a professional poker player. I didn't really fail. I didn't really succeed. I just got burnt out, and I came back to Colorado, and this was in 2009. And in June of 2009, I found myself in a conversation with a friend of a friend, and he was telling me about how the cannabis medical regulations were about to change to allow more people to obtain their medical card, and also to create regulation around opening up of dispensaries to make it easier. And he was looking for someone to go in on a dispensary with him. And I had some leftover money from the poker playing days, and I invested in it with him at the time. And we opened a dispensary for $15,000 in 2009. And that's what got me into the cannabis space. And that was more around the caregivership model at the time. So, it was the wild, wild west. It was a lot of fun back then. We didn't know if we were doing something legal or illegal at the time.
I'm just
But
laughing at the price tag because like now that'd be $1 million to start it, right?
oh yeah, I mean, yeah, depending on what state you're in. Yeah, I mean, even probably more than that, honestly. Right. So yeah, we were very lucky, and I was very lucky. I was privileged. I was just in Colorado at the right place at the right time, and just really, as you can tell by all the things that I'm working on, whenever I start working on something, I mean, I'm fully committed to it. And so whenever he brought up the idea, I mean, within 1-2 minutes, I was just all in. I was like, all right, let's do this. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had no idea the journey that it was going to take me on at that time. I just wanted to be a part of something that was going to be what I felt like, revolutionary. And I didn't even realize to what extent that would be. And here we are now, 12 years later. It's crazy.
And were you able to convince the Rolling Stone journalist back in 2015 that pairing was legit?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the end of the article, the first 2/3 of the article was her, calling out the processes and stuff, while giving credit to the event producers of having fun, but the processes. And then by the end of the article, she gave it all credit. So it was wonderful. And there is a lot of legitimacy to what we do with cannabis pairings. So for your viewers, pairings are not infusions. It's completely different. Pairings are all done through smoking. And we created this concept in 2014 of pairing terpene profiles of cannabis with flavor profiles of food to harmonize and enhance. And so terpenes are organic compounds that not only exist within cannabis, but they exist within all plants, fruits, vegetables, flowers, and so on. And the natural world, they attract pollinators and detract predators. But within cannabis, it actually gives you the type of feeling that you have. So THC gives you this high euphoric effect, while terpenes actually give you the feelings that you have. So THC doesn't make you sedative per se. It's myrcene or caryophyllene or linalool, right? The terpene that's in it that gives that to you. So when we created these concepts, because the idea was to create in 2014 to create wine style cannabis experiences, we're like, all right, wine pairings are a thing. Let's do cannabis pairing things. And we actually thought in the way that probably some of these other people did in the Rolling Stone articles, like, oh, we'll pair, strawberry cough with a strawberry cheesecake or something stupid, right? Like just a name play on things.
Yeah.
And once I learned about terpenes, which no one knew about terpenes in 2014. I mean, there was maybe one Leafly article on it, and Kyle Cushman had maybe done an article on it, but we couldn't find anything on it. And so once I was, introduced to them, and I was like, holy shit, this could actually be a science, like we could actually break this down to a science and do this pairing. And then I really learned how pairings were, or how terpenes drove the type of feelings you have. And I was like, wow, we could actually, not only could we break this down to a science, we could actually give someone a very tangible tool when they leave our events, where they could identify the type of high they're going to have by using their senses. And therefore they can consume something that's going to enhance their experience opposed to take away. So once, that really came into my viewpoint, we were all in on the cannabis pairings, and we're like, we're going to be the best at this in the world. And we really dissolved everything else that we were doing. I'm sorry?
And you've since done 2,500 of them since then.
Yeah, actually now we've served over 3,000 people. So okay. Within that, it's probably been 280 events or something like that, Yeah. So some of the events we do are 6-7 people, and then the largest event I've ever done was 220 people.
And who?
But I would say typically we're doing events from 10 to 12, 15 people.
And who is your typical participant? Where what's the profile?
I would say, people from the Northeast, people from the Midwest, people from the South, and they're corporate America, really. So, but within that spread, it's all over the place. We do the younger crowds that we have, typically are celebrating like a bachelor, bachelorette party or something like that. The older crowds that we have are typically celebrating birthdays and doing like, friends' vacations and stuff like that. But I mean, I've served everyone from professional athletes to politicians, to people who love EDM and like to party, and just using it for that sake. But if I had to say like an average, archetype, if you will, I would say that they're 45 years old. They make $150,000 a year. They have a family where their kids are older, so they can they can travel and stuff, and leave the kids at home. And I would put it at that. But as you know, cannabis is for all walks of life, and we really experience that with Cultivating Spirits. It's just some people, like, this will be their biggest dinner of the year, and some people are used to having $200 dinners twice a week.
And do you get a lot of repeat folks?
Yeah, we do get repeat folks. I would say, since a lot of people are traveling out here for special occasions, how often are people going to travel to Colorado or California or Nevada? Nevada a little bit more because of Las Vegas. There's people who choose to go to Vegas once or twice a year with their friends. But yeah, we would, because of that, people are really booking us when they're, a part of a special, let's say, vacation, right? Travel vacation and stuff like that. But I will say that we just did the first cannabis dinners that were ever produced by a billion-dollar hospitality company, and that was the Fairmont Hotel Group.
In Northern California, right?
Yeah, so in Berkeley, their Berkeley property, which is the Claremont, which is like this historic property, we just did 3 dinners there that were like 55 people each, and 40% of the customers booked more than one.
Huh.
And that was their Berkeley clientele. So they did all the invitations, they handled everything. Like they marketed it, they put it out to their Bay Area clientele, and that's who came. And the Claremont is a pool and racket club, so you can imagine the type of clientele that was there, and they booked 40% of the people booked more than one.
And did you ever imagine that when you started this, you'd end up at the Claremont in Berkeley?
You know what? I mean, when I first started this, no. When I was maybe 3 years into it, I knew that we would have a chance, because I got booked for, it was there's a yearly conference of I believe is the chief marketing officers for all the major hospitality companies. And it was, the Hilton, Carnival Cruises, like the biggest people there are. And this woman had been doing these for 20 years, and it's very boutique-ish. Only 100 people are invited. And for instance, the year before I met them, they did and she just books the wildest experiences for them, right? So they come together in this conference, but I mean, she books these wild experiences for them, and then they do a little business. So it's a lot of play for these guys. But they had lunch in the locker room of the Philadelphia Eagles, why the Philadelphia Eagles were actually playing a game out on Lincoln Financial Field. So this is the type of experiences that these people did. And she came to me wanting to do a cannabis dinner. She backed away from it. And then a couple weeks before the event, because it happened to be in Colorado that year, so she moves around to different locations around the States. And she's like, I really want to do this. Let's just make it not so in their face and give people more of a choice, and we'll move forward with it. So we actually did a past hors d'oeuvres pairing dinner party on a rooftop. And she didn't think one person would consume cannabis. 25 of the 100 people consumed cannabis. 2 people actually Ubered away and left the whole thing.
Because they were offended, or?
Yeah, totally offended by it. Okay. And then about 40 people were very intrigued but didn't consume cannabis. And then, the other 25 people were just doing their own thing. So I felt like that was a pretty, a good understanding of how the United States felt about it, right? There's a couple of people who are just completely appalled by cannabis and don't want to be around it. There's a small section of people who, consume frequently or will consume once in a while. There's a big portion of America who's very intrigued by cannabis, but, doesn't necessarily want to dabble in it. And there's, a good chunk of people who just like, yeah, it is what it is.
And do you feel the people that were offended, was it because it was kind of sprung on them, do you think?
That was part of it. Yeah. So this was actually a surprise for them. She did not tell them that this was happening. So the producer of the event, she actually really felt bad about, not maybe giving people more of a heads up that this was coming down. Yeah. But, there's also the stigmatization of that they're next to their competitors, right? So the person from the Hilton didn't want to be seen smoking from the person from the Marriott, or what, there's that type of dynamic as well that was going on. But I remember as I was leaving the event, I took a shot with the head of the Four Seasons at the time. And I can't remember if he was partaking in cannabis or not, but he really enjoyed the presentation and stuff like that. And he had so many wonderful things to say. And at that moment, I was like, wow, this is going to happen. These people aren't going to invite it into their concepts yet, but what I do know is that there is a board meeting happening where these guys are telling people what they just experienced, and we gave them such a good experience from our production standpoint, not withstanding the emotions of being in front of cannabis, right? But from our standpoint, we gave them such a beautiful presentation and great education that I knew that we were going to get more opportunities in the future.
And I know that you don't pair with alcohol in these events, but with all the activity in the beverage market and the infused markets, do you see that something that might be down the road?
Yeah, so we've actually done some wine pairings with our events, just a couple of them in very unique situations because liquor licenses do not like cannabis at all and stuff. So there's some complexity working around that. But yeah, I mean, cannabis and alcohol is, I mean, it's, it can obviously take people to an extreme feeling that's very uncomfortable. But when managed correctly, I mean, it's great to have a joint and a glass of wine. It's a wonderful experience. And many people will, have been drinking alcohol and going to concerts and smoking forever. So that's the one thing about cannabis is that yeah, totally. And that's the one thing, nice thing about cannabis is that it does, it does go well. It's very friendly with some of these other substances, right? And so, yeah, I think there's going to be a big play on that, but I honestly don't. I think we're 10 years down the road. I don't think any people setting up, regulations around social consumption are even entertaining the thought of having alcohol at the same location as they're serving cannabis. So yes, I think it is, but I think from a regulatory standpoint, we're 10 years away.
Yeah, they haven't figured out the adult use, so they're not quite ready for adding more layers on top.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I also don't know if the cannabis industries are going to want it, to be honest with you, because if you're at dinner, per se, and you're being able to serve cannabis and alcohol, it's essentially people are going to drink less alcohol, like because you're going to be more relaxed. Cannabis has a feminine feeling to it. So you go a little bit more internal. You don't feel like you need to be external, where many people who have, let's say, more than 2 drinks typically when they go out, right? Like they're having 5, 6, 7 drinks whenever they go out. And I think with cannabis involved with it, they would cut that back. So I don't think the alcohol industries would want that, because I do believe it's going to bring on less alcohol consumption.
Yeah, I mean, I think the alcohol market is looking at infused beverages. So I think it not competing directly with that market, but as opening up other markets.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they are really eyeing the beverage market as well and want to take up that space. But, they're also, they want to, cross the bets, right? So if people are going to start drinking less alcohol and consuming more cannabis, then they can obviously feed off of what they're losing in alcohol sales on the cannabis side of things.
And one of your other projects is the Cannabis Wedding Expo, which did that start before the tastings or around the same time?
No, that was about 2 years later. So this woman by the name of Beck Coop was actually on my first cannabis tour that we did for the public. And she was doing a cannabis and bouquet company at the time called Buds and Blossoms. And so we just stayed in touch as like young entrepreneurs in the cannabis space, right? Who are trying to bring to life these unique, these unique concepts. And speaking with her one day, she was giving me some heartache stories about not being accepted by wedding expos, traditional wedding expos. And I was just like, Beck, we gotta just, let him say no with a smile on your face, because one day we're going to be allowed in here. And I was very used to being told no, right? Especially back then, all the time. And it was exhausting because people wanted all the information, even though they knew they were going to say no, because they were curious about the cannabis space. And so I was just kind of giving Beck some pep talk like that. And then she told me that one of the more well-known companies out here in Colorado tried to charge her double for a booth. And right when she said that, I was like, F them, let's start our own. because it's one thing to not accept something because you don't understand it and you want to be cautious. It's another thing to try to take advantage of that. And so that really made me upset. And I literally, that's how it started. And, a month later, we're like, if we're going to do this, let's do this. And so we did it. And the first one, we had Vice News out there. We had Fox News out there. We had sold it out and people loved the experience. And, why I love these experiences so much is that when you see the light switch flip in people's heads, that you can experience cannabis with more depth than you ever thought you could. And that's what's so beautiful about the Cultivating Spirits dinners that has kept me going through the hard times. And this is what I actually saw at the Cannabis Wedding Expo. And I was like, we have to spread this out. Like, we need to bring this to San Francisco next, because that's the backbone of cannabis, right? Northern California. And we'll spread out from there. And now we're in 8 markets. So it's been a phenomenal experience.
And did you guys take a hiatus with COVID, or what did you do around COVID?
Yeah, so COVID hit right in between our spring tour. So we had just done LA, San Francisco, and we were gearing up for Vegas and Denver. And then we see Austin City Limits, they step away. The next day, the NoCo Hemp Expo, they shut down. And I didn't think there was any way we were shutting down. We're a lot smaller than those events, but Morris Beagle, the head of NoCo Hemp Expo, was so nice, and he got on a call with me the morning after they decided to pull the plug. And I was talking to him, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I realized that this was just going to get worse, and we were going to get more questions and more questions. And so we actually pulled the plug before Nevada even had a case reported. And the city thought we were crazy. And then 5 days later, the governor shut the whole state down. So we were very proactive with that. And then, so we were on a 17-month hiatus, if you will.
And then
we're back. So we did 3 shows at the end of 2020. And then we have 8 shows scheduled for 2021. Obviously, with Omicron being present, we're very aware of that. We're still moving forward with everything as planned, but we're keeping a pulse on everything from the CDC guidelines, but also a pulse on our vendors, our attendees and stuff like that, to see if we need to shift anything potentially. But we're in LA, San Francisco, New York City, and Phoenix in the spring. And then we'll be in Boston, Denver, Vegas, Chicago in the fall time. And then possibly Toronto. We have produced in Toronto in the past, but the borders are a lot different than they were then. So that's still something we're navigating a little bit to see if we'll be back in Toronto this year, or have to wait 1 more year before we get back up there.
And I mean, weddings in general have tapered off as a result of COVID. So is the wedding market back?
Yeah, 2022 is primed to be the biggest wedding season on history, actually.
Pent-up demand, right?
Exactly, pent-up demand around it. And so, 2022 is gearing up for the biggest wedding season ever. And, I think, one thing about it is, I think a lot of, younger generations were moving away from traditional weddings of like these really big bashes and stuff like that, and changing it to be more unique experiences. But now I think there's actually more of a clamoring for the big gatherings because they just haven't been able to have them for so long. And so now all of a sudden you can be the person who brings together all the family and friends into your celebration of your unification with your partner. And so we're primed on that part of things. But again, we are still in a pandemic right now, and every time we think we know what's happening, we don't.
Clearly not.
Clearly not. So it's definitely been it's been hard. It's been hard for event producers and hospitality, and there's more demand for it ever, and there's less workers in it as well. Hospitality has been one of the hardest hit markets within all of this. And we're feeling the same. A lot of our chefs have moved on to different careers, and, people are just, people are really valuing what they do in this world a lot more, which I think is beautiful. I mean, I think it's a great awakening. Just, unfortunately, the area that I'm in is just dramatically affected by everything that's going on.
And, you guys started off in, pretty established markets, Colorado and California, have been around for a while. What's it like going into the new markets as they start to open up?
Yeah, the new markets is my favorite opportunity, actually, because we're advocates at heart. That's what's driven us to keep going, is being the advocate and seeing how cannabis can change the world, and especially through cannabis hospitality, because we're the people who are giving the people the experience, right? Like, Canopy Grow might be the biggest cannabis company in the world, but their executives have probably never even smoked with one of their customers, because there's a barrier to social consumption and public consumption, right? And so here we are, really these shepherds of this plant and these experiences. And so I think our work, what we do of creating people's relationship with this plant, is very important. And so the new markets give us an opportunity to show people that if cannabis can be accepted at a wedding, it should be accepted anywhere, and we really believe that we put a taste in people's mouths who, whenever I walk into a room or an event, what I want to do is, the person who hates cannabis the most in that room, I want to cater to that person, because those are the mindsets that we need to change. And so within that, we present ourselves in such a way that is very tasteful for people who don't even like cannabis, and so we get to do that with the Cannabis Wedding Expo, from the social consumption aspect of it and acceptance. But then on the business aspect of it, we give these, mom and pop brands and these startup companies a platform where they can market themselves for relatively inexpensive, $550, opposed to, an MJ BizCon or some of these other bigger events where, you have to, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and so it's like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a bud bar company. That would be so fun to do. Okay, I got $5,000 to invest into this, right? And great, I'm going to use 10% of that to go to the Cannabis Wedding Expo and market myself, right? If I get one or two, if I get one person, I make my money back. If I do two bookings, I'm making a profit. And there's also a lot of exposure from media, from content creation, from business relations that you can have, all for $550. So to me, it's just a wonderful opportunity to give unique concepts a chance to see if it's going to work or not.
And what kind of advice do you give to folks that are planning a wedding so that they don't risk offending the people that are anti?
Yeah. So, for us, it's really coming from the education standpoint, but I think the number one thing to lean on is that this works for my lifestyle and this works for my health, right? And so who are we to challenge what someone chooses to put in their body that helps their lifestyle, And so if you need to go to grandmother who might not be about cannabis, like, it's just like, grandmother, this works for me. And this is a choice that I have. And I believe it's a safe one. And I just hope that while you might not want to partake in it, that you understand that it works for me. And, it seems to work, it really
and then
does.
You find out that grandma's been doing edibles for the last 3 years.
I know, right? Yeah, they're like, oh, you smoke too? Hey, let's go. We got this. But honestly, that was the biggest barrier to people having cannabis at the event, was the conversation with the family, right? Like that's the biggest barrier, outside of, maybe the venue allowing it, right? And stuff like that. But coming out of COVID, the cannabis conversation is not a big deal anymore, like having that conversation with your parents. I remember when I had the conversation with my parents that I was working in the cannabis space, and it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I was so scared, and my parents have both passed away since then, God bless their souls, but they come from a conservative background. And whenever I was scared of my father, not my mother so much, but my father. And I was 26 years old at the time. Cannabis was only on the medical market. So this was probably 2011. And when I sat him down and told him, my dad was like, well, I don't agree with cannabis, but He's like, I trust you, and that anything you're going to do it with all of your heart, with the best intentions, and I trust you in this space, you know. And honestly, that was one of the best things he could have said to me, you know.
And so how important, and I know that there's an element to this, but how important is, spreading the education and spreading the knowledge?
Great. The most important thing. And creating these people's relationship. And so the project that I kind of mentioned as we were starting off here, that's not on my LinkedIn yet, which you will see soon. We actually did an unveiling of it on 12/21, more of symbolicness with the solstice. But we are actually creating Kashom. And Kashom is a master class of cannabis for beginners and connoisseurs that we have structured in a way of wisdom, science, and application. So we are able to give people more ideas around the deeper impacts that cannabis can have in your life. We have more of the general knowledge aspects, and which would be the science, portions, the fact-based areas, and then applications of how you can apply this into your life. And so this will be a Britannica of videos that are 10 to 15 minutes long that people essentially can choose from and choose what they want to study. And we cover everything from, history and plant medicines to actually understanding the plant itself, understanding how to use the plant, understanding how the plant will make you feel, and then into the service aspects of the plants. And so we cover topics from, terroir and the connoisseur side aspect of cannabis to also how to load a pipe. What are plant medicines? What are master plant medicines? How cannabis makes you feel from a science point of view, but also more of a theoretical point of view of like the feminine feeling of cannabis. What hyperpriming is and how that can promote creativity. And so I've actually been working on this project for 3.5 years, and we are launching the products on March 22nd. And I'm just absolutely thrilled. And we have some of the most brilliant subject matter experts who are on board outside of the work that I've just done. And we're trying to create a conscious for-profit business model around this as well, because we want to stand up for what cannabis represents and not just brand ourselves, right? Like we want to be able to embody what we feel like cannabis embodies and its history throughout, culture for thousands of years, So to me, what we have the opportunity to do with this educational platform is to change people's relationship to cannabis. And I believe if people have more awareness around their cannabis consumption, whenever they consume it, then they're going to become in better touch with themselves. If people are in better touch with themselves, I believe they'll be in better touch with the world around them. And this is our mission with what we're doing at Kashom.
And where can people learn about this?
So kashom.org. People can go to and enter their email address. There's not much information about it out yet. We're on Instagram, Kashom _. We're on LinkedIn, Kashom, CASHOM. But we just did the unveiling on 12/21, and we're actually going to be doing a video series where we'll actually announce that it was more of a mysterious unveiling where we didn't even actually tell people what Kashom was. It was just more drawing like interest and stuff like that. And then we'll actually release what Kashom is in a couple of weeks. So yeah, that's kind of our marketing strategy that we're doing. And then, once we get into February, March, it will be full on, presenting what our content is, who our subject matter experts are, and everything like that.
I know also that you practice yoga. What is sort of the alignment between cannabis and yoga?
Yeah, that's a very layered question for me. And I can approach it from multiple standpoints, whenever I started, cannabis pairings and learning about terpenes, as I said earlier, there was no information on it around, out there around cannabis. So I actually started studying essential oils, brands like doTERRA, because terpenes are what make up essential oils. And so I had a lot of friends in the yoga community who were like brand ambassadors for doTERRA, and they have a lot of education out there. So that's what I started studying. As things got difficult with Cultivating Spirits, as we launched it, we were the first company in the United States to offer cannabis dinners to the general public. And, that was, there was a lot of hard obstacles we've overcame. And I just drove deeper into the mat as things become more difficult. My lifestyle completely started changing, where in the past I may have gone and met up at the bar with some buddies, but I started driving deeper into the mat and my own mindfulness. And then I started learning a lot of mindfulness practices, which I then started incorporating it into my actual events. And so while we're on the platform of this fine dining experiences, you can find a lot of mindfulness within that is digestible for the yogi, but also for, corporate America, right? So I think there's a nice way to weave in mindfulness with, pleasurable experiences. And with how cannabis using it and diving into yoga, cannabis has the opportunity to drop you into a very deep space within inside of your body, if you use it with that type of awareness. And then going to practice when you're in that type of space can really allow you to feel your body in ways that you can't without cannabis. And so it's beautiful how it can tap you into yourself. And then, using that within, the yoga practice can just deepen your practice, can deepen your meditation, can deepen your breath work. But if not, if you're not using strains that are, that have a terpene profile that connect with your body in a way that can drop you into those places, it can also be detrimental and take you out of your body, right? And so the first thing is for you to identify with yourself, what type of feeling you're looking for, how certain things, sometimes, you might be a very high energy person, but if you have a stimulant, then all of a sudden you're going to just kind of shut down because your mind is racing so much, right? Or you could be a very mellow person and smoke something stimulating, and it's going to make you feel very uncomfortable, right? Sometimes if you're very mellow and you smoke something sedative, it actually makes you more alive. So you kind of have to identify that within yourself, and then consume something appropriately. Typically smaller amounts is how I like to partake in it, but we're all different. And it can be a very beautiful marriage between the two.
And this educational component, do you help people find, pick the right, or help them discover how to pick the right strains for the outcomes that they're looking for?
Absolutely. So with Kishom, we absolutely teach people about terpenes, right? And the entourage effect and things of that nature, so they can understand how it may, the kind of the general understanding of how something make you feel. But the other side of that component is to checking in with yourself, right? About some of the things that I just spoke about. So that is, so there's two sides of it, right? And that's where it gets complex with brands trying to put 5 different, put strains into, say, 5 different categories, right? Like at first we were indica sativa, and then, Candescent came out, and, which was great at the time, right? When they came up with, here's energy, here's connect, here's sleep, or whatever, they were one of the first big brands to start identifying feelings with it. But where they missed the boat is that I'm going to smoke something connect, and you're going to smoke connect, and we're going to feel different from it. So they missed the boat on connecting with the consumers and educating consumers of how to connect with their body. And so this is a big part of Kishom. We put a lot of emphasis on this through this education to teach people simple ways in which they can, questions to ask themselves and how to identify themselves. If you look at, this is, I don't want to, well, I'll phrase it like this. In Western medicine, it more comes from a place of, if you're sick, let's go get medicine to fix that, right? And there's been some brilliant discoveries over the last 150 years around this, right? And it's been so impactful. Well, the Eastern medicine looks at, medicine is more than just curing, right? It's really about upkeep, right? And therapeutic aspects of it. And so Ayurvedic is an Eastern medicine science. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ayurveda before, but yeah. So for the people out there who haven't heard of Ayurveda, they categorize your archetype first, and you're either Kapha, Pitta, or Vata, which is basically Kapha is like earth and grounding, Pitta is fire, which I'm very Pitta, and then Vata is air, right? And so then they associate what type of foods help Vata, right? What type of foods are good for Kapha, right? What type of weather conditions are good for you, right? Desert, dry climates, right? Like my body can thrive in that, but it's not as good for it because I'm so fire. So they really teach you how to kind of archetype your own body. So then you can start visiting things that may potentially help you and not take away from you. And one example of around food and what we're putting into our body as medicine, which the West doesn't necessarily recognize food as medicine, is that, for instance, I used to drink lemon water every morning and I kept breaking out in my skin. And I learned that lemons are actually heating. And I'm so Pitta with that heat from the lemon made my skin break out. I switched to limes because limes are cooling, and I have lime water every morning and I don't break out anymore. And so that was me able to identify with my body and then what I was putting into it and how it affected. Now, obviously, like there's a lot of complexity there, and luckily I have some teachers, but these are some of the threads that we're starting to bring into the cannabis consumption space for people to understand what and how they may identify what makes them feel good and what makes them not. We do touch on Ayurveda and Kashom. We also touch on Western medicine as well. We bring them both, right? We're not trying to tell people how to do things with Kashom. We're trying to give an overarching understanding how so many people view this from around the world and try to guide people to find what works for them and what doesn't work for them. And that's really our mission with it.
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate early on that a friend of mine was very involved in Chinese medicine, and it was always about finding the balance. If it's too wet, then you need to find something that allows it to be dry. If it's too hot, you want cold. So it was always about trying to create the the balance, between those elements.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like likes, but that's not always the best for you, right? So I'm again fire. I love spicy food and stuff like that, but I shouldn't have spicy food, even though I still do it. It should be cooling food. I should be in more moist climates than dry climates, like you just said. But my body thrives in dry climates because it's familiar.
And I also know that you've done some nonprofit work. What have you done in that area?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It's really near and dear to my heart. I was a co-founder of an organization called Hispaniola Health Partners, where we started a medical clinic in Southeast Haiti. And this actually sprung up in 2012 when I created some health and leadership camps in the Dominican Republic. So essentially basketball, volleyball programs for these neighboring villages that a dear friend of mine was working with another nonprofit organization of running these K-8 schools and these medical clinics. And so I did that. And then, a string of things led me into Haiti because we were close to the border. And I was with a gentleman doing a feasibility report on this clinic that a gentleman, a Haitian, wanted to actually build himself because he was the rich guy in the community and he was tired of people knocking on his door asking for rides 2 hours away to get medical attention. And so I go over there and I was just taken back, by how amazing the Haitian people are and how peaceful and how artistic, like one of the more beautiful cultures I've ever been around. And B, like how happy they were, even though they had no resources, which we had here in the United States. Like literally still getting waters from wells and, hauling it, 5 miles, for their family twice a day. I mean, seeing this, and we were making good money in the cannabis space, especially in those kind of unregulated backpack days of the early medical side in Colorado. And I thought to myself, I was like, wow, I could raise $50,000 to get this clinic opened, and what I realized is that they didn't just need a handout. They actually needed to be a part of building something. We actually needed to empower the community to bring in a health service that had never been in that region ever in the history of the region, and people weren't used to it. And so, yeah, we had these grand ideas. We're like, let's just start our own nonprofit. And there was 3 of us and a Haitian that did it. And then we just started going through a journey that I never expected to go through. And here we are now. I guess we would have formatted we went into formation. I guess it would have been in 2013. So here we are 8 years later. We have a medical clinic open. We just opened up a birthing center. We have a mountain mobile clinic that goes throughout the region. We have a cervical screening program for women. That's the only, or was up until a certain point, the only public cervical screening program in the country. And next month, we're actually opening up dorm rooms. So, people who are working on their doctorates and stuff like that can actually go down there and do the dissertations and live there and work at the hospital for up to a year. So that's actually going to be launched next month. And within all of that, we only pay Haitians. No Americans ever accepted $1. We have, a paid staff of like 7 or 8 Haitians. There's almost an economy that's built up around the center itself because people are starting to travel from the mountainous regions to the area. And we actually have partnerships going on with the government now as well. And the next goal that we have is how do we make it sustainable? And so we can step away from it fully. And that's our goal, it's amazing. Like, it's a beautiful thing, us giving so much to people who are poor, but it's the old proverb, right? Like, don't give a man fish, teach him how to fish, and that's what we really are trying to do. And we spend a lot of time on doing that because we don't want to just be another NGO operating in the country that's just, focused on handouts instead of actually empowering the people of Haiti and empowering the communities and training people.
And if people want to learn about that project, where can they do that?
Yeah, Hispaniola healthpartners.org. That's a big.
You don't have to spell that. We'll put it in the links below. So
perfect. Yeah, do that. Also, all these links, if you go to Philip_Wolf_ on Instagram, I have all these links on my bio.
Okay. We'll make sure to add those. We very much appreciate your time today. You're a busy man. So we appreciate you taking the time out. Sounds like some great things. I hope you have a great year in the wedding business this year, and it is everything you hope for, and Omicron doesn't screw it up for you. But we look forward to great things. Hopefully you'll come back to Berkeley, so we'll get a chance to experience that ourselves.
Yes. Oh yeah, we will be. So the Fairmont, just real quick, we have 6 in line in Berkeley.
Look, another program. There you go.
Yeah, we have downtown San Francisco, and there's Sonoma property for the Fairmont. So we're going to expand the dinners into 3 more properties in Northern California. And then the goal for the next year is to do them in all legal markets that the Fairmont operates in.
Great. We will add a link to that as well below, so that you'll have lots of opportunities to check out what Philip is working on. Again, we appreciate your time. We look forward to seeing you in person at one of these events, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Patrick. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak today.
Have a good one.
Well.
Thanks.
Blessings. Bye.